My time as a Whitehead Fellow gave me a chance to take what I had learned in grad school, so sort of a theory, that, when I was talking about genetic studies earlier and how we look for the DNA variants that link to disease. And the way those studies traditionally work is to ask individually, does this DNA variant contribute to disease? Does the next one? Does the next one? We never ask that question, what happens when you think about DNA variants in combination? And obviously, in the human body, we're dealing with a combination of different variants. And so I started with a pretty theoretical idea of how we could look, and at least putting the groundwork that looking at combinations of genetic variants could matter. And then my time as a Whitehead Fellow was using that concept to our advantage. So now that we know that this combinatorial dynamic is important, how do we make that something that helps us understand disease? And so we ended up using these combinatorial dynamics as just more clues as to how this particular genetic change is influencing the body in disease. And so that allowed me to sort of develop an approach, and now we're just taking that approach and seeing how far we can move disease insights now that we have a strategy that we think is fairly effective. It comes back to the idea that when you think about the DNA sequence and you have a genetic variant that you inherit, that variant is in every cell. Nearly every cell in your body will have that variant. And so when you want to know what does this do in the context of disease, you have to think about what part of the body is affected. So if a genetic variant affects your skin cell function, or if a genetic variant affects a function of cells in your brain, leads you to very different hypotheses about how the disease works, let alone how you would treat it. I think about how different drug delivery would be if you understood the genetic variant acts in the skin versus the brain. And so what we wanted to do is take the raw information of this genetic variant as a link to disease and first associate it with we call it its anatomical origin, the place in the body in which it has an impact. And that can be quite difficult because there's a lot of things that are similar from cell type to cell type, so we have to find and highlight those differences to make this approach. But in the end, the strategy says, here's a genetic variant that's linked to disease. Does it influence the function of the blood? Does it influence the function of the brain? It takes a whole list of genetic variants linked to disease and goes through each one and locates them to the area of the body they influence.